Tribe, this is Tyro. Um, Going for full vulnerability here today. Going shirtless. That white you see is not a shirt. That's actually my body that's not exposed to the sun. I'm going in a bit of a different direction with my Facebook traffic. I'm going to get far more into vulnerability and authenticity as a direct result of that, and probably more video content than written content, because picture's worth 1,000 words. I don't really know how much my face is worth, but I'm sure it's worth a lot because I'm awesome. But I want to tell a little bit of my story on how I got to where I'm at now. There's oftentimes, in my personal experience, and then just as a general rule, oftentimes when somebody teaches about positivity, teaches about self-care, has these different theories, a couple of different assumptions get made. One of those assumptions is that that person has never experienced anything overtly traumatic or anything like that, and just lives their life this way all the time, which kind of flows into the next one, which is that that individual has no off days, has no days where the thoughts don't get the better of them, or the emotions, or the missed opportunities, or whatever else. And I want to be very clear with each and every one of you that that still happens. I still go through that kind of stuff. So I want to tell you a little bit about where I came from, and I want to just really expose myself in the emotional sense to true and honest feedback. Naturally, my phone is going off as a result of the work that I'm doing right now in vulnerability. At any rate, to start off with, I started off a post last night. I was going to type up on it again this morning. I may still type up some stuff, but I want to do the content here. So basically, the post left off when I was about 5 years old, and I don't know, I could pause it, but I'm not going to, because this is the process that I go through, and people tend to experience me as rapid fire. That's not always the case. And a lot of times it feels like I'm doing this in my head when it's really only about a 1 or 2 second lag time for what's going on outside. There goes the phone again. At any rate, so let's just get into the thick of it. So, from the span of about 5 years old to about 8 years old, I was experiencing some massive emotional trauma. My folks were going through a divorce, and as most kids do, I thought it was my fault. And I thought that there must be something that I could do to get them to love me enough to stay together. And that brought in a lot of self-doubt, self-criticism, self-harm, but not in a purely physical way. It was mostly emotional self-harm, and created a pretty dark place for me. Which, when parents did get divorced and the abuse extended beyond myself, to an emotional, physical, intellectual, spiritual, just really basically a hell. It was a lot of different versions of hell. the sense of worthiness, the sense of being loved by God or Creator, the rest of that, the shame, all the rest of this stuff was just being compounded. It was being compounded. And if all that was happening externally, and I was still maintaining a internal knowing, an internal truth, an internal integrity, then I could have just gone through it, no biggies. But that didn't happen. I went into some very severe depression and anxiety and anger, lots and lots of anger. And that's what a lot of people don't see anymore. I've done a lot of work on resolving anger issues, which is self-love and healing and forgiveness and a bunch of these other tools that I use. But I've got so much practice at being angry that I'm really good at bringing it back up. And I used to think it was my power source and the rest of these things. Vengeful, guardian, all this stuff. So I still have some learning to do in that regard. Going to keep this relatively shorter. These are for me, and hopefully y'all get something out of them as well. And I appreciate you investing your time, your energy with me and going through this journey. But basically, we're just going to put this in the first one. Let's just crack it wide open. So around 13 years old or so, I discovered masturbation. And I was also given a book by my mom, the book, rather than any discussion from my parents or anything on proper protocols and how do you even ask that when you're that age. And that's a discussion that really doesn't come into the forefront. But I was having these, obviously the kids at school, peer pressure. It was like, oh yeah, I just discovered, oh cool, masturbation, yeah, cool. And so I began to explore it and then became addicted to it. And then right around that same time, pornography came into my space. I was about 13-ish. And for 20 years now, pornography and masturbation on a fairly regular basis have been addictions of mine, compulsions even, ways to release and relieve, to distract, to do a lot of other things. And there's been a lot of people come into my space who have experienced addiction in many forms. Often it shows up as substance abuse, alcohol, drugs, whatever. And I've been internally very critical of those people. Part of my journey now gets to be developing compassion for them through self-love for me because of my own journey, what I've gone through. Now, I imagine this is going to create interaction. Some of the things I've gone over, some of you may say, that's nothing. That's no big deal. Seriously, why did you even spend 10 minutes of your time and mine to get to that point? Some of you might be like, oh, wow, Tyrell is human. Wow, that's vulnerability. That's huge. Some of you may be like, oh, well, okay, so you're a giant liar, and everything that you talk about and say and do is just a bunch of talk, and you're really good at talking, but you don't apply any of this stuff. And all of those have their value. All of those are absolutely merited. What you get to know is that the nastiest things that you could possibly say to me, and I encourage each of you to try to say the nastiest things that you can, but I'm going to bet that I've said them to myself about 1,000 times over already. And that's part of what I'm healing by putting this out there. So, I'm an addict, or at least I have been. I've been working to create a different experience. There's a lot of other things that I find that I'm addicted to. So I'm working on creating a different experience. And this is the end of the first one. I'm going to stop it at 11:11 because I'm cool like that.